Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Samantha said, my name's Dominique. I'm just going to share the PowerPoint that I've got for you. The PowerPoint is quite lengthy. The full PowerPoint, but what I've actually did is hide some slides and take some slides out so that we can get through what we need to get through. And we're just going to kick off now. 2 minutes just to slide it. You get everything organised, and then it stops working when it's actually our time to present. What is that actually? 2 seconds. Hopefully it should come up just now. Okay, Samantha, I can see you. So can you tell me if you've got it? Okay, and randomly it's now at the last slide. So just 2 seconds. I'll take it back through. Okay, so for those of you who know Cedar and for some of you who don't in the room, I'm going to assume that everyone's starting position is the same, and we're going to do a whistle-stop tour. So Cedar stands for Children Experiencing Domestic Abuse Recovery, and we recognise it as the Domestic Abuse ACE Trauma Recovery Toolkit in Scotland. It fits lovely with the ACEs agenda as well, although it predates the ACEs movement quite significant amount of time. So why is it so powerful in recovery? It's evidence-based and it's a recovery programme which utilises intervention for children that's child-focused and it's strengths-led and peer-centred. Okay, so I'm just going to, I think, Samantha, are you sharing these slides or am I sharing them? Because I'm not sure. These slides they're not the same as the ones I've got. And I did adjust the model a wee bit, so I don't know if, hold on just one second.
It's you that's sharing them
It's
at the
sharing.
moment.
Hold on, there we go, that's the one I'm looking for. Okay, so evidence-based, child-centred and child-focused, strengths-led. So the programme focuses primarily on these core themes. So we have safety, emotional resilience, domestic abuse education and awareness, improving communication between child and caregiver about abuse, problem solving, self-care and support, and that hope and looking forward to a positive future. So that's the core themes that we hope for in children. It supports children and young people within their wider psychosocial functioning with a key theme of promoting individual, family and community resilience. We recognise that if we can get individuals to a place of recovery and moving forward, and we can do that within the family context, then we're creating that ongoing resilience within our communities who are affected by domestic abuse. We also offer one-to-one support and advocacy, and that is very tailored to the individual needs of the young person and the family. And absolutely, Cedar is underpinned by the articles in the UNCRC. It's absolutely a children's right-based model, and it looks at children's experience of domestic abuse rather than looking at the experience of the women and how children fit around that. This is absolutely about having that child-focused lens for children and young people. It's really important because we really rely on that community engagement. Cedar's organised on the basis of and responds directly to the needs of the community for those that are affected by domestic abuse. It's safe, confidential, and it allows those community members to discuss and explore those personal experience and that age recovery and resilience, and it promotes that social inclusion as well. So thinking about that community resilience with that. There's joint planning and resourcing is core to Cedar. So what we absolutely have is this multidisciplinary delivery model, which we would partner with other agencies and deliver our Cedar groups in partnership with them. It's really, really successful, the model, in terms of upskilling anyone who delivers Cedar. So any of the Cedar coordinators, it's always great to work with someone from a different agency and see what they bring to the table. And then the view is that they take away what we bring to them and they take that back to their wider teams. This then ensures that our partner agencies better understand the complexities of domestic abuse and its impact on children, and this leads to an improved multi-agency response to domestic abuse. Similar to what MARAC does, what Cedar tries to do is create that common language of the impact of domestic abuse on children, and that common language that reflects on the risks associated with domestic abuse for children and young people. So absolutely, these are the real strengths of Cedar. Cedar hasn't stood still in Scotland in the last 10 years. We've been evidence-based for now 10 years in Scotland and counting. That was the pilot, predates the 10-year inception into Cedar. But what we started off was with traditional model, which is the mums group and the child's group, which run concurrent. So it's about mums understanding the child's experience of domestic abuse, and their group focuses very much on that. It's a strengths-based model, and it builds resilience in children and young people for the traumatic impact of domestic abuse. And the programme is absolutely built in that early and effective intervention using that gendered analysis and trauma-informed approach. Like I said, we haven't stood still in Scotland, so we have developed this model really robustly. So what we have now in Fife are the creators of the IDER model. So IDER stands for Early Years Domestic Abuse Recovery. This model recognises the detrimental implications that domestic abuse has in attachment and bonding, which damages the quality of that parent-child relationship, and this is crucial for emotional regulation, adaptive behaviour and healthy brain development in children and young people. So this model sits lovely with the early years education model, but also with our SNPs model, and also within our health approaches as well in those early stages in pregnancy. Western Bartonshire have created what we call the sister model, so that is children in care domestic abuse recovery. This is about recognising that all children don't come to the recovery model with a mother that's been through the same experiences and is still supporting them. This recognises that a lot of children will have been separated from their families as a response to the domestic abuse that's been going on, and that it was viewed too risky to leave them at home. So this model very much fits lovely with the promise as well, and the commitments of the promise. This looks about upskilling carers, so that would be foster carers, kinship carers, adoptive parents and corporate parents. So those who would be looking after our children and young people within the context of children's homes or residential care, we upskill them to become therapeutic parents to the children and young people in recovery domestic abuse, helping them to understand the social, emotional and behavioural impacts that this has had in the child's ability to their adaptive development and moving forward. So we recognise very much that if a child or a young person is supported by the people who are caring for them, then their chances of recovery are so much greater. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a wee whistle-stop tour. This is some of the priorities. A wee bit dated, this slide now. So this is where GIRFEC fits in terms of the wider policy context. So absolutely, we assess in GIRFEC and using the Scenario indicators. We also measure impact using the Scenario indicators at the end, and also in follow-up sessions to make sure that we're sustaining those outcomes in the long term. It also fits with the mental health strategy. It fits absolutely with Equally Safe, priority 3. The justice priorities in Scotland, I'm sure they'll have moved on, but we still fit there. We also fit very much with the public health priorities in Scotland, and also fitting with that children and young people's mental health task force. So I like to think of Cedar as the golden thread that goes through all of the landscapes across health, across social care and across education, and it supports children with all of the different policy drivers. I've put this slide in just to show where we fit with children's rights. And this slide really doesn't like being on. It kept doing this the other day as well, so apologies, it's just haven't done it. It's just to show that we do fit where we fit and where we fit with all the articles. So it's just not going to play the game, so I'm just going to move on from it. But we do fit with all of the articles in terms of the UNCRMC, so in terms of no discrimination, the best interests of the child, thinking about that family guidance as the child grows and develop, protection from violence. When you go through all of the articles, Cedar is absolutely entrenched in lots of these articles, and we promote that. Throughout Cedar, we actually talk to children all the way through about their rights, and how to exercise those rights and how to get their rights met within the communities and within the families that they're living in. So that's something that we do a lot of work with children, and actually to let children recognise you do have rights and you do have a voice, and this is the platform that we can help you to use that voice. Like I said, we absolutely do. We are embedded very much with GIRFEC in the curriculum of excellence. We assess and we evaluate in terms of all of the Scenario indicators, and we look at those outcomes in terms of the meaningful impacts that we're having in Cedar. We also use this as a place to put forward recommendations for others who are going to be working with the children after they've been through Cedar. I'm not going to label this. This is the Children and Young People's Programme. So this is the traditional model. This is what we have in the traditional model for children and young people. So the key principles for this are that mothers have a better understanding of domestic abuse in their children, that children and young people have a greater understanding of domestic abuse and have learned how to manage their emotions and actions in response to this. And Cedar gives children and mothers greater knowledge of safety planning and support, so how to do that. The key themes for children and young people in this are feelings, hurting in families, changes in families, responsibility, healthy conflict resolution, problem solving, identifying and talking to safe people. And for mothers, it's about accepting the child's young person, talking about safety, providing reassurance for that young person, being a good role model and role modelling how to handle conflict effectively, and making sure that mums are shown how to display their anger in the healthiest possible way, and how to create positive meanings out of what has happened. So that's that programme, and that's the Mother's Concurrent programme that goes with it. You'll see quite a few differences in that, but the core themes are the same. We also have this session 9 for mums, which is about grieving those losses and recognising that, you know, mums didn't always want to really leave the relationship, but they recognise it's not safe to stay. So there's absolutely a grieving process goes with those losses of relationships and losses of previous lives. This is the IDER programme. So you'll see the IDER's a lot smaller. It's an 8-session programme. We don't have a concurrent programme for this because obviously mums are expecting whilst they're doing the programme. What we do have is the add-on. Mums can have babies who are up to 2 years old, so they might be expecting and have a 2-year-old, and we really join this up with the likes of the early years education stuff, so like book bug and play, the importance of play. So in IDER, what happens is the first part of the morning is about connecting mums with their babies. So if mum's pregnant, it's about connecting them with their bump and teaching them how to be responsive and talk to the baby and all of those things that we would see in healthy attachment that predates birth. If there is children there, it would be about teaching mums how to connect and how to play, how to recognise distress in their children, how to do book bug with them, all those nice things that we would do. So it's really about strengthening those attachment bonds. And the key factors for this one is about mums having a greater sense of self-worth and well-being, and by us promoting that and, you know, talking to them about how important it is, you know, to take care of that child before it's born yet, we would see that as a golden opportunity for mums to think about leaving relationships at that point. Again, it's a co-delivery model, so partner agencies do better understand the complexities of domestic abuse, and we would hope that by trying to break those cycles early and effectively, babies, children and their mums are at less risk of domestic abuse. So this sits lovely with the SNPs team, like I said, or the early years education. This is our sister model. So it's a wee bit bigger. This is the biggest model. We've got it as a bigger model because it's about recognising blended families at this point as well. We also have introduced the family group discussion platform, and we've threaded that through the programme. The family group discussion can take place at any time, even though it says it's session 13. It can take place at any time when we feel that there's conflict within the family and we need that child to be right at the centre. So for those who are familiar with family group discussion, very child's-led, and it's about children's rights approach as well, you know, about their voice being heard. So we would incorporate that process into the wider sister programme as well. So this is promoting a child-centred model where the carer participating in their own group enhances the therapeutic experiences for the child or the young person. We give support to carers because we recognise a child's and young person's right to live without abuse and hurting, and ensure that responsibility for abuse and hurting is placed with the perpetrator. We recognise that sister children might be placed with either victims or perpetrators, families, wider families, so it's about managing that within the context of the group, and it's about upskilling the carers and their understanding the dynamics of domestic abuse, the social, emotional and psychological impact of coercive control, and enabling them to be effective therapeutic parents to the children and young people that they're looking after. Okay, so this is the carers programme, very similar, again, follows a very similar structure, but absolutely about helping them on the young children's feelings. Okay, so the impact of Cedar, children are more able to understand their experience of domestic abuse, and carers are able to understand that through the eyes of the children and the complexities and the feelings. And there's often quite a lot of conflict in that because they love usually their dads or who is typically the abusing parent, but they don't love the abuse, and it's about helping separate that out, and that can be really difficult for adults to understand. It's about keeping emotionally and physically safe and those enhanced problem solving and conflict resolution skills. It's helping to manage and regulate children and young people's emotions and actions. It's helping them to recognise who safe people are and where to go when they need help and support, and that increased knowledge about what support is actually available to them, one within the family and one within the local communities. We would hope that mothers and carers, through reflecting on the needs of their children, are more able to understand domestic abuse and the impact on children and young people. They're able to keep children and young people safe and support them. They're aware of their own needs and able to access appropriate support, which is really key because Cedar's not for adults. Cedar is a children's based model. Children is absolutely the focus for us. So it's about, yes, we recognise that this may have impacted on you as a wider family or as a mother victim, but what we have to do is make sure that we are getting appropriate supports in place for them to deal with their own recovery recovery needs and thinking about their children's recovery needs in perhaps a different way. It's also about making sure that they're emotionally safe and they have developed that stronger sense of self, emotional well-being and insight into their children and young person's experience. So making sure that we are creating strong infrastructures in terms of that family support, mother support, parent support for children and young people to help them anchor children and young people, help anchor them to somewhere to go to make sure that their recovery is at the forefront. And we help them to be therapeutic and responding to the needs of the children or young people. So recognising their behaviour as part of the whole child and making sure that that's understood and that we tackle that in a meaningful way for children and young people. And we're as therapeutic, trauma-informed, ACE-aware, all of the buzzwords are in there for Cedar, and we support families and their own recovery. We also recognise that the best place for the child to recover is within the context of the family. So it's really important that we make sure those families are resilient. And like I said at the start, that then impacts in community resilience going forward. So what's next for Cedar? Really important that we get that sustainable funding. We've actually lost quite a lot of Cedars in the past 3 or 4 years that weren't successful in applications for DES fund, etc. What we need to make sure is that we are seeing Cedars embedded as part of every HSCP's ACE-aware trauma-informed recovery toolkits. It is the recovery model. It's got a 10-year evidence base. I'm not sure there's any other recovery model nationally that can say the same. So really important that we are seen and funded appropriately, and that means all resources, and that means sticking to the fidelity of the model and not cutting corners in terms of cutting costs, because we know that won't work. It must also be prioritised. Recovery work needs to be prioritised in the same way crisis work is. COVID had, pushed recovery work to the side, and understandably so. But with that, what we did then see is lots of young people who were in recovery being triggered back into crisis because their recovery needs were not met, and that we really need to be looking at that. Recovery must be prioritised and recovery must be seen as Cedar. We absolutely need a national Cedar coordinator. I see my colleague Laura James is on the call today. Laura, we miss you greatly. We are trying to hold it all together between us as a kind of consortium approach, but there's so much work that needs to be done at a national level that we absolutely need to see that reinstated, and that goes hand in hand with the CSAP. So we need decision makers around the table to ensure that things are prioritised. We also need to make sure that the Cedar portfolio that I've gave you a whistle-stop tour of today, so we have Cedar, IDA and Sister, they need to be available to every single child in Scotland. It's not okay that we're doing this postcode lottery again. If we're really meaningful about a child's rights approach, then we absolutely have to make sure that that is available for every child. What I probably didn't say, which is really, really important to say, is that both IDA and the Sister model are both models that were born out of co-production and asset-based models. We listened to what our families were telling us in each local authority, and we responded to those needs. And children, young people and mothers are at the core and centre of those models. They helped build the models. So really important that we keep building on that. We recognise the importance of victim survivor voices at the heart of all of this within Cedar. Cedar also links really, really strongly with our new Barnless model, with the Promise, with GIRFEC, with UNCRC, with the new JIP model that's coming to Scotland, being ACE-aware. It also links lovely with our new opt-in part of the new child protection guidelines in Scotland. Cedar is just there for all of it, and it's such a great resource. It's ready. It's in a state of readiness to go. We just need to now make it accessible, and that's the key part for the next part for Cedar. We also need to be doing more research and impact evaluations of Cedar, so to check those long-term outcomes for Cedar. What is the impact of Cedar? Originally we were all funded and we had all of those evaluations done, but as the funding fell away, they haven't been revisited probably in the last 5 years. But we need to now look at evaluating IDA and Sister, but also that impact measurement of all of the models. That needs to continue, and of course that needs funding, and we need someone to own that and take that on board. We also need continued development underpinned by the co-production and asset-based model that I've said. So that is not the end of Cedar. We have developed in lots of different ways in lots of different local authorities. So for example, Inverclyde really aligns Cedar with the Own My Life model, and they created a space for women where when they were going through Cedar, they could get an NQ at the end of it. So it went towards employability skills, it went towards CV, it went towards all of that stuff. Unfortunately, it's been lost in Inverclyde because they didn't get the funding to continue. So that particular stream has been lost, which I think is a real shame, because I think we could have embedded that, again, just as part of that national portfolio of Cedars. We also need to think about aligning parent support models with Cedar. We need some research into that. What we're getting anecdotally is that women are being put on parenting programmes because it's seen as their failure to protect, their failure not to be able to parent their children properly. We're also seeing perpetrators being put on parenting programmes who then come out looking absolutely fabulous, and it just all undermines the whole Cedar process. So we need to look at exploring that. Where does Cedar fit with those, with the Mellow, with Incredible Years, with the parallel lines, all of the different big parenting models that we use in Scotland, because actually there's quite a lot of conflict, and quite a few of the parenting models are not trauma informed. They don't have a gendered lens either, and quite often we found that when mums are put on Cedar and are put on these parenting programmes, they don't always complement each other. So we absolutely need to research into that as well. I think for me, really, really important, we have these amazing portfolios. We can now take care of children in Scotland from age 0 to 23 years of age, children and young people, offering them Cedar. What we don't have is a model that accommodates for children who have additional needs. They're all very ableist models, so are the models for mums. We're very aware of that in Cedar, and we need to work closely with our partners and the relevant agencies to make sure that we move away from that ableist model, and that all of our resources are available to all children and young people and mothers and caregivers, regardless of what needs they have. We need to make sure that that's done as a priority. And we absolutely need to align this with the ACEs agenda. Domestic abuse is the golden thread that runs through all of those categories of ACEs, and is a standalone one in its own. We absolutely have a domestic abuse recovery toolkit in Scotland, and that really needs to be shouted about. And I think it's amazing what we've done in the past 10 years, and we need to continue to promote that. And like I say, final word, every child in Scotland should have access to this. This should not be a postcode lottery, and it should also not be dependent on whether or not there's funding, short-term pockets of funding available. This is an HSCP responsibility, in my opinion, and I think we need to have it across HSCPs. So that is my whistle-stop tour, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.